Hey everyone, today I got something that is quite unusual for my type of content. So you know me, I usually do survival utilities, some things that are really, well, useful in survival. And this probably isn't that useful in survival, but I still built it because I had a fun idea. And what this is a variable lag machine. So basically behind me there is a selector panel, and depending on how far it is to the right, you will have more lag, and then there's of course a central toggle, and that will toggle the lag machine. You can change how heavy the lag is while the machine is running, although when you are at maximum lag, you will of course have to wait for quite a while for it to adjust because, well, the game is lagging, and well, it needs to catch up and all that. So before I explain how the lag machines work, those are lag machines by 77 Tiger, or well, I adapted them a little. I will explain the individual components of this machine first. So first of all, there is the central interface for this lag machine, and that is this selector panel right here. And depending on which button you press, when it is more towards the red, it will be more lag modules. So in total there is 16 lag modules, and depending on how far you press the button, they will be more activated, and of course there's 16 inputs on this selector panel right here. How the selector panel works is fairly simple. So when you press a button, this will push up a redstone block and an observer. And of course the redstone block will power this redstone line, which will decide how strong the redstone signal is and will decide how far it goes up until there. And that will in turn decide how many lag modules are active. And when this part also gets pushed up, then the rail gets updated, this observer detects it, and then the top pistons push down any inputs that were previously there, except the one that is currently being pushed, because the button pulse is long enough for this piston to stay extended. So if I press this, this will push up this one, and all the other ones will get pushed down. So as you saw, this one was pushed up previously, and now only this one is up. I'm using a selector panel and not a lectern because, well, there are 16 lag machines here, and redstone signal strength only has 15 on states. And when you have a lectern, there will always be, well, 1 to 15, but you cannot have 0 on a lectern. Whereas with this, I just don't have a redstone dust on the end, or I could just have a redstone dust, it doesn't really matter at all, because until it gets all the way over there, it just won't reach. But basically, when I have a selector panel, I can also have a 0 state easily instead of having to, well, interrupt the signal somehow from the lectern when I have a lectern. Of course, a lectern would be much more compact, but this is overall just a cleaner interface in my opinion. Now, aside from the selector panel, there is also this toggle right here. This is the central toggle for all the lag machines, and basically when you turn this on, this will power this redstone line, and when this redstone line is powered, then these clocks will be toggled, and these clocks are what toggle the lag modules. Let's turn this off for a second, and now I'm going to show you how it actually gets regulated, how many modules are on. So basically, of course, you would need a solid block here for this repeater to keep transferring the signal, and depending on how the inputting signal strength is here from the selector panel, the more of these blocks will get pushed down. So right now, because I am at the 0 state, this is basically only one lag module active, there will be no blocks pushed down at all, and that's why for the 0 state I just have nothing being pushed down at all. And as you go up, so for example, if I press the second button, this will be 2 lag modules active. As you can see, this block will be pushed down. That means that the redstone line will be able to continue there. And then in turn, this piston gets depowered. Of course, we're using torch SI here. And then this torch will get depowered. And then this clock will be activated. Once the redstone line toggles, of course. Because of this, we can safely increase or decrease the amount of active lag modules while the thing is actually running. Let's demonstrate that for a second. So I will now turn it on, and as you can see, it is already lagging. As you can see from the scoreboard on the side of my screen, that is something, by the way, I also want to discuss. So it's very simple. What I have on the side of my screen is a counter, and every time one game tick passes, then there will be one added to the counter on the side. And as you may know, there are 20 game ticks in a second, so when the lag machine is off, it should usually run at full speed like this. And when you turn it on, let's put it back on one active module. As you can see, it already slows down. So as you can see, it is running now. The toggle is active here, and we can increase it if we want to. It will get slower. And even slower. And you can see how it gradually slows down. And when you are at the last one, it will be very slow. My computer is already fairly powerful for what I use it for, and it handles Minecraft fairly fine, but these lag modules are just absolute performance killers. Given that you have enough dust and target blocks that are being updated, it will absolutely kill your performance, and it doesn't really matter what computer you have. It will just, well, completely destroy the performance, or rather the TPS of the game speed. So as you can see now, I have 5 modules active, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. This one is not active, as you can see, and is up until this point where the actual lag modules are being updated. So enough talk about that. Let's turn off the system for a second, and then I can show you how the lag machines actually work. Now that the lag machines are off, let's take a look at the lag modules themselves. And you can see 3 main components. The first would be the target blocks, the second is the redstone dust, and the third would be the pistons that actively update the system. Like I said, these lag machines are from 77 Tigers, which is also an Xploit member, and I will link his channel in the description. So before we can understand how these lag machines work, we need to understand a little about how redstone works. Now in redstone there are actually 2 types of components. There are producer components. Those are the components that create redstone signals, such as a target block, and the target block here is essential because, well, that's the block we have in this lag machine. And there are consumers, and consumers are blocks that take an input, and we can take pistons as an example. A redstone wire or redstone dust is neither of them, it is just a wire that connects the two. Because a redstone wire is neither, it is actually very low lag, and when you toggle redstone wires, it doesn't cause that much lag as it would in Java Edition. We can prove it with this setup right here. This type of lag machine is actually quite laggy because it's already very big for a lag machine, and when we toggle the redstone dust, if you take a look on the counter on the right hand side, there's pretty much 0 impact, so the redstone dust itself is really not laggy at all. However, if we place a block, as you can see, it will freeze for a moment. And that happens despite the fact that we are not toggling any of the redstone dust. Why does that work this way then? Well, it is quite simple. The developers of Bedrock Edition didn't want to have another disaster like Dust in Java Edition. Dust in Java Edition is very laggy, and well, it is overall not a very good system at all at the moment, but changing it would mean breaking a lot of existing contraptions, so it's not something they can easily do. But well, in Bedrock Edition they had a clean system, so they could just do whatever they want. And well, basically what happens is when you place a block near a producer, maybe a consumer too, it will check if it can power anything. When we hook up this target block to this piston, this target block, for instance, will already know that it can power this piston right here. And that is why redstone dust is so low lag on the Bedrock Edition. It is because it does not have to calculate what it powers once the redstone dust gets powered, but it already pre-calculates everything before. So if we power that, of course, that will get powered. But yeah, it does the calculation not when it actually powers something, but when something gets connected in a sense. And this is why powering the redstone dust hardly causes any lag, because everything is already calculated. However, when we update the redstone dust or the target block via placing a block or removing one, there is a pretty big lag spike, because every single one of those target blocks has to recalculate what it's going to power and what it's not going to power. It doesn't matter if there are not any consumers around, it will still recalculate everything, and with all that redstone dust being connected to all those target blocks, it is just a massive source of lag. This recalculation only gets triggered by certain actions, and it is mostly just placing a block or removing a block, and a piston moving also counts as that, because when a piston arm extends, it replaces air and all that, you know. So yeah, that counts as well. As you can see, we can have an observer clock running and it doesn't cause any lag at all. However, when we break it and break these blocks and place blocks, it triggers the recalculation. And so in this lag machine, we have these clocks which trigger two pistons that alternate in, well, extending and retracting. Let me just build up this clock real quick. Now this design is necessary because we want to update the thing as frequently as possible. So when we have this, as you can see, while one of the pistons is retracting, the other one will be, well, in idle state, and so forth and so forth. So there will always be at least one piston in half extension state. We can actually use the lag machine to demonstrate this. So as you can see, the lag machine is on right now. And yeah, there will always be one piston that is completely or half extended. And that is vital for this lag machine because we want to trigger the recalculation of the target blocks as frequently as possible. There's something else about this lag machine that I want to talk about, and it is something that is unfortunately due to the limitations of our redstone. So when I turn it on and you take a look on the right hand side on the scoreboard, as you can see, it will always skip one game tick, and it will, well, basically run fine on one game tick and then have to process all the recalculations from the target blocks on the other. This is because we can unfortunately only have a piston action every second game tick. We cannot have odd game tick pulses, or delays rather, because the way our redstone works is always locked to every second game tick. So in short, there are two types of ticks for redstone. There are so-called C ticks and P ticks, and those respectively are consumer ticks and producer ticks. Basically, each of these components will only process 10 times per second, although the game runs 20 ticks per second. Whether a game tick is a C or a P tick is simply decided by a boolean value in the game code, so basically a true or false value, and depending on that it will then process information. Why is this important for this lag machine design? Well, basically we can only trigger piston actions on consumer ticks and not on producer ticks, or rather only on 1 out of 2 game ticks, and that means that we'll always skip one game tick where there are no calculations being done from the target blocks. This would technically not be a problem if you could trigger blocks being placed or removed on the game ticks on which pistons cannot act, but it is not very easy to automate that. I think you can do it using sand, but sand is very unstable unfortunately, and that is quite unfortunate. But for general purposes, slowing it down every second game tick should do the trick, and I don't think there are many uses for this anyway. Speaking of which, what uses are there for this lag machine anyway? So one use for lag machines like this, besides annoying people, is simply that, well, you can, for example, slow down the game without having to make use of external programs like Cheat Engine, and then you can better observe timings that happen in game that would be hard to observe otherwise if you had the game running at full speed. So for example, if there are timings that you find hard to observe otherwise, you can slow down the game using this machine and take a look at them like this. And that way you can better observe behavior. This, for example, is another consequence of the consumer-producer system we have on Bedrock Edition. Not gonna talk about that now, this is a topic for another video. But yeah, that is pretty much the only use I see for this machine right there. So what is this really for then? Well, I'm not sure. I might build this on Xploit, and well, we don't actually have to use it. We can just have it sitting around, and whenever we do need it one time, I can just toggle it, but I don't see us needing it anytime soon. I'm not giving out a world download for this for several reasons. The first being that this is one of my many testing worlds, so yeah, it is quite messy, and I really don't want to give that out. And of course that this could potentially be dangerous, and while this works relatively fine at the lowest setting on my computer, this will of course depend on your device performance. So if you are on a mobile device, even the lowest setting might just completely kill off your game, and that would of course not be a good idea, and I don't want to be responsible for that. So whatever you're doing with target blocks and redstone dust, don't place too many of them, especially not in a formation like this, because of course that will be not very good for your performance, and I don't recommend it. And by the way, I don't take any responsibility for this. So that's about it. Like I said, this is a bit unusual for my type of content, but I had the idea yesterday in the Xploit Discord, and well, I thought it might be fun to build. And I'm more interested in the actual circuitry than all the lag machine use part, and yeah, that's pretty much the entire thing. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to subscribe if you are interested in stuff like this. I have much more like that right now and also coming soon. And well, I will see you around. Bye!